So our next topic of the show, guys, is going to be about Evolve and the future of Evolve. If there is a future at all for this franchise, I think, guys, that Evolve is a game, of course, that we've already talked about. We've talked about a couple of times now on the YouTube channel, but I wanted to kind of wrap things up as to where we stand right now with the future of this franchise. So where is Evolve 2? As in the second game, or is there going to be a second game, or is there going to be a soft reboot of Evolve? Let's kind of talk about that right now, guys. And so as we've talked about in the past, kind of what happened to Evolve, that being, this franchise that had so much potential, right? I mean, we can all agree that Evolve was a game that had a massive amount of potential, and it really had so much hype build up as well. I mean, think about it. Like, I'll never forget when, they start promoting this game. All of us, many gamers out there, were thinking that this was going to be something really special. And I still think to this day that it could have been really special. And I think it still could be special to this day if it were to be supported. But either way, guys, it was a game that really came out at the wrong place at the wrong time in gaming history. And so what I mean by that, guys, is it was a different type of game, right? Didn't really have a campaign mode. It didn't really have anything other than like co-op modes, like a 4v1 type of multiplayer game, right? And I think what happened was with 2K games, they kind of stretched themselves so thin with this kind of, mentality that they were going to do like this multiplayer game. And I think, as we had spoken and read in the past with, what the developers were thinking, they were fully on board with this 4v1 multiplayer. And you know what? It's interesting because a lot of the games to this day that have that kind of, setup in their multiplayer games, like a 4v1 or a 3v1, really have Evolve to thank for that, because they were the first ones to really kind of try it. And they kind of foresaw the future of what like that kind of genre of multiplayer, and it just really fell flat on its face. And then you had other games that have come out, in the more recent past that have kind of taken that same type of multiplayer game and have turned it into like a juggernaut of a multiplayer. And you think of games like, Dead by Daylight, and that's a really big game at this point. Evolve could have been that. And I think it just, obviously it was like the scapegoat. It was the scapegoat game that at the time that it came out, just everybody was just, that being like reviewers and, content creators and just so many people were just like kind of jumping on this hate of Evolve and for some of the moves that they were making. Sure, a lot of it had to do with like the DLC. A lot of it had to do with, just different pre-order bonuses and things of that nature. And even the developer said they wanted to make the game free to play, and they didn't. And it was a $60 game, and lots of people were really bummed out after receiving the game, and it just didn't meet expectations essentially. So what does that mean for the future, guys? Obviously, back in 2018, we saw that 2K was shutting down the servers and shut down the servers of Evolve. My thought process is, could they ever bring it back? As like a soft reboot? Could they ever bring it back as a, just as something, a sequel? Or could they, maybe they would take the ideas from Evolve and put it into like a new IP? I think all those things are very much something that could happen in the future. I personally want to see a soft reboot of Evolve. I would love to see the developers get the opportunity to make the game right, kind of make it right with everyone, but make it a free-to-play multiplayer experience with microtransactions, and I think people would absolutely love it. I mean, the idea of it was really cool. It was complex, because each of the different monsters had, of course, different abilities, and they all like worked differently, so it made things very difficult and very different. I also think that having a campaign would have really helped as well, and maybe other game modes. And I've said this on multiple occasions, guys, that many video games to this day are having this same kind of issue where they're kind of sticking with one game mode, or they're sticking with, a couple of game modes and no campaign, no co-op modes. It's all based around, Battle Royale, for example. I mean, it's like when you just have a Battle Royale game and it's all BR, over time, people are going to want to play, maybe a different game mode. I mean, most people will. They'll want to play other game modes. So I think what these games need to do is they need to evolve over time. No pun intended. They need to evolve over time and create new game modes to keep people coming back, keep people really interested in the game. Now, obviously, games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, they're changing the map up, so that kind of keeps people coming back to the, to those Battle Royale modes. But I really think more game modes. The same thing with Evolve. It should have added some more game modes, maybe like just a single player story, even if it was very, short, some co-op modes, some other modes outside of the 4v1 type of game. Ultimately, guys, I think that was kind of, what doomed Evolve wasn't necessarily like the lack of other game modes. It was just the fact that the DLC and the, all of the pre-order bonuses, people just absolutely jumped on the hate wagon of Evolve when they were kind of showing the pre-order bonuses and things of that nature. And lo and behold, I mean, that was kind of like the prep for what was coming in the form of microtransactions. It was very interesting how this all kind of went down. But now a lot of people just don't like microtransactions at all. And, there's a lot of hate around different games based around the microtransactions, which for good reason. But it's interesting that Evolve, it was something to do with it was to do not with microtransactions, but with like DLC, even though DLC is technically microtransactions, but it kind of in a little bit of a different way. And then of course, like pre-order bonuses, just really interesting that people got so uptight about that. But at the same time, I mean, I understand why, and what really made Evolve fail. And it's really unfortunate. It really is that it was just an unfortunate thing. I think it was a game that came out at the wrong place at the wrong time. So what does that mean for Evolve 2? And I think that kind of explains where is Evolve 2? Right now, guys, it's shut down. I mean, there might have been talks of Evolve 2 coming out at some point, when Evolve first launched, because it sold really well, but it is for whatever reason, it's not only like viewership, but also just the player base completely plummeted. And really, I mean, 2K and everybody involved was just kind of caught with their pants down, like trying to figure out what they needed to do and what exactly went wrong for them. And I really do feel bad for, for the developers. And I just, it's so sad because this was a game that had so much potential. I believe it was one of those, it was my most anticipated game of the year when it first came out. And then after picking it up and playing it, it just, obviously it didn't, meet those expectations. And one of the things that, for me at least, that kept me from, going all in on this game was the fact that it was only multiplayer. It didn't have any campaign. It didn't have co-op. Real other co-op modes. It was basically just 4v1, which is a really interesting concept, but it just didn't seem to work. And so I don't think an Evolve 2 would necessarily work. Now, a soft reboot, free-to-play reboot with some microtransactions so that the developers can make some money, I think it would be extremely successful, in my personal opinion. Because when they made Evolve free-to-play, it was a little bit too little, too late. And so that's where I think Evolve 2 is at this point, guys. I think that it is not in a limbo state or anything like that. I think it's completely dead. There's no way that they're going to make Evolve 2 at this point. But a soft reboot, I think, is something that could happen. What it really comes down to, guys, is if you would want to see a second Evolve game, you have to be that voice. I always talk about with StarCraft, we have to be the voice of StarCraft 3, making a new game. You as a part of the community and the community in general has to be the voice of that and say, look, we want this game made and we want a continuation of the story. And so that's what's going to get, that can move mountains, guys. Sometimes the developers don't listen, but when they start seeing a big movement come into the fray as far as, hey, we want this game made, if, you know, enough people are saying that they want an Evolve 2, there's a potential possibility that they might look at it again. But let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think was the real downfall of Evolve, and would you want to see a sequel or a soft reboot? Let me know what you guys think, and let's have a conversation about it.